certainly, I want to thank all of you for being here. I know everybody is very busy. This is another fantastic program that our wonderful organization puts together to be here today to talk about the State of the County's address, and an annual event in recent years that I know you're all anxious to hear from our two wonderful county judges, and we certainly will get to that in a second. We're certainly glad that they are here today. First and foremost, I would like to recognize the list of elected officials that are here today, so I'd ask that you hold your applause to the end. First, on the federal side, Jay Guerrero, representing U.S. Senator John Cornyn. David Sawyer, representing U.S. Ted Cruz. The state side, Terry Goodman, representing State Senator Larry Taylor. Faye Picard, representing State Representative Greg Bonin, Dr. Greg Bonin. From Galveston County, County Judge Mark Henry, Commissioner Ken Clark, and Commissioner Kevin O'Brien. From Harris County, of course, County Judge Ed Emmett is here. Commissioner Jack Mormon. Harris County Tax Assessor Collector Mike Sullivan. Gloria Coe, representing Judge Holly Williamson. From Clear Lake Shores, Councilmember Amanda Boren and Councilmember Richard Sowery. From Dickinson, Councilmember Wally Dietz. From Friendswood, Councilmember Steve Rocky. From Houston, Councilmember Dave Martin. From Kemah, Mayor Bob Cummins. Mayor Pro Temp Carl Joyner. And Councilmember Wanda Zimmer. From League City, Mayor Tim Paulson is here. From Nassau Bay, Mayor Mark Drummond, Mayor Pro Temp David Braun, and Councilmember Bob Works. From Pasadena, Mayor Johnny Isabel is here. From Seabrook, Mayor Glenn Royal, Councilmember Robert Lorente, and Councilmember Gary Johnson. From Taylor Lake Village, Mayor Pro Temp Irene Goran is here. From Webster, Councilmember Doug North is here. From the Port of Houston, Commissioner John Kennedy is here. And so please, really a round of applause for all the great folks. Certainly, meetings like this could not be put on without our wonderful sponsors. And again, today we have another wonderful sponsor. We want to certainly thank TXU Energy, and Colette Valette, Senior Manager, Community Relations, is here. Colette, please stand up and be recognized. Thank you for your sponsorship. Being here. And we have 3 new members that we would like to recognize today. First is Cadian Ambulance, and we have Jerry Romero, President, and Mike Burney, Vice President here. Here, please. Also, from HPP Corporation, Mark Briggs, Contracts Manager, is here. So Mark, welcome. And with Chemical Process and Production, Greg Ploss is here. And so Greg, please recognize also. So thank you to our new members for joining us today. And so I'd like to call up the first individual that's going to introduce our first presenter, and that is Ken Clark, Commissioner for Galveston County, to come on up. Ken's a true conservative who's fighting for lower taxes, smaller government, and increased protection for our families. He's involved in a variety of things, including our Intergovernment Relations Committee, the Conference of Urban Counties, the Galveston Mayor and Councilmen's Association of State Republicans Executive Committee, and the Mainland United Way, amongst many other things. And so please, a round of applause for Commissioner Ken.
First of all, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for coming out to hear the State of the Counties, because, you know, one thing about county government, it sometimes can tend to get not the notice or the understanding of some of the things that we do, because, you know, we do our job so efficiently, at least in Galveston, that, you know, the municipalities usually take the forefront. We're okay with that. You know, I would like to, while I've got the podium and it's kind of my turn, so to speak, I'd like to go ahead and just briefly mention Proposition 6 on the November ballot, this November 5th, which is the $2 billion Texas SWIFT Fund, Infrastructure Revolving Loan Fund. It's going to fund projects across the entire state. We've got about $53 billion worth of projects we need to do. This fund is going to fund about $27.5 billion. People will borrow the money. It'll help do the environment. We'll get the projects up and running so they can start paying those loans back, and then that money will be reinvested out. Early voting starts October 21st, goes through the 1st of November with Election Day on November 5th. So please encourage your family and friends to get out and vote for that proposition, because it is about water, but it's really about economic development. As Bob Mitchell has stated several times, is you've got folks in other parts of the country pitching, don't move to Texas because they don't have water. So let's address that. Let's get our family and friends out and vote, and let's move forward on that issue. Now what I'd like to do is introduce my county judge, Mark Henry. Mark Henry was elected in November 2010. It has been an interesting time on Commissioner's Court with him. It's almost kind of like I'm in my first term along with him because of the philosophy of the change of the court. Mark is a fourth-generation Texan. He was born and raised here in the Houston area. Graduated University of Houston. Retired major in the U.S. Air Force, serving our country for over 21 years. He's a family man, has 3 children, is married to his wife Amy, and they live in League City, Precinct 4. Some of the things that we've accomplished, well, I shouldn't say, I guess we should say we, I guess maybe I'll take credit for it, but one of the things that has been refreshing with the judge on the court is that we've lowered the tax rate 3 years in a row. You know, let me say this, some of those tax cuts were ceremonial at best. They came under the effective rate, which qualifies it as a tax cut, but we're going in the right direction. We're clamping down on contracts. We are making efficiencies in county government by reducing spending and shrinking the size of the government, because we feel that if we cut the spending that we don't need, we can spend it in the areas we do need without going back to the taxpayer. We've also refinanced debt, which will end up saving us millions of dollars over the life of, over the next several decades. And with that, please welcome County Judge Mark Henry.
Bob Mitchell told me to talk at least 3 minutes, but at 5 he starts blinking the lights, so I'll try to stick to that time schedule. This is probably the only time Commissioner Clark has ever gotten up here and talked and said anything without mentioning FM 646, so I'll do it. If you're familiar with 646 near I-45, I'd like to report to you that we're almost finished. Those cones should be coming down next week. Yeah, sad people care more about that than the tax rate, but they do. The commissioner talked about our budget, and it's true, we have reduced the tax rate 3 years in a row, and I call that a pretty good start, I guess. But one thing in particular that will impact our budget going forward, I'm going to brag about, and will make Judge Emmett jealous a little bit, is we reduced our number of JPs from 9 to 4, effective January 1st, 2015. And in Harris County, and Judge Williamson isn't here, but in Harris County, some judges, and I think she's one of them, handle as many cases by herself in 1 year as all 9 of our JPs did in 1 year. So when you have that kind of inefficiency, we saw it was right for reduction. Due to a Supreme Court decision that came out over the summertime, it relieved us of pre-clearance requirements, and we took advantage, jumped on that, and got it reduced from 9 to 4. There is a lawsuit which is not being taken very seriously. We expect to prevail on that. So that by itself, and I say this will make him jealous, reduces the number of elected officials in Galveston County by 9 when it's fully implemented in 2016, along with corresponding staff, should be around the 30 to 35 number. So I have got a little phrase, we're shrinking government responsibly. We did not need that many JPs. There was a favor to political friends and family, and we have stopped that since none of my family works for the county. We don't need anything like that anymore. I would like to brag about the construction, the beginning of the construction of, unfortunately now it's the second largest Buc-ee's in Texas on I-45 at exit 18. It was the biggest on the drawing board. And then when the dirt started moving, it was second biggest. We refer to Buc-ee's as retail cocaine. I don't know how restrooms can attract so many people, but they can. and it's amazing. My hat's off to them as a business owner. I wish I'd have thought of nice restrooms. Talk briefly about Ike recovery. We are plugging along with IVE Recovery, and I know Trace Finley here is working with us. He's in the audience today. The Community Development Block Grant Program, round 1 is almost complete. We still have a few projects that just had a very slow start, so they're not completed, but they are almost finished. Round 2, we have had pre-construction meetings, and that should be fully underway in the next 90 days, I would guess. FEMA, I wish I had such good news to report. FEMA is like trying to push molasses up a plank. You can't do it. So when you send something to FEMA, you can just set your calendar for 6 to 8 months, and maybe you might have heard back by then, maybe not. So we are plugging along. Unfortunately, the FEMA aspect isn't quite as easy. If you have heard of what's called the Ike Dike Committee, and that's 6 coastal counties in this area, formed before I got here. I just was missing the first meeting, so I got elected chairman. And they have been given, all the way out and officially received it, $4 million to conduct a study and to see what can be done. And the street name for it is Ike Dike. I think there's actually a more official term. I forgot what it is, but that's what we call it. And we expect to meet in 2 weeks to accept that money from the General Land Office. And this is kind of a funny story because it's the first time I'm ever aware of that delaying it actually got us more money. We were only supposed to get $3 million. It took us a long time to get our act together. Now we're getting $4 million. So I guess I could float the idea this way another couple of months and see what happens, but maybe that's a better idea. Something that I'd like to let you know about that is just now being discussed. How many of you know where Pelican Island is? I know Dr. Merrill does, but how many of the rest of you? Okay, Pelican Island is the little island as you go over the causeway. It's off to the left. It's home of Texas A&M Galveston. Thank you. That's doing this, okay? It has got a very old bridge, no longer capable of serving rail, and auto is iffy, I guess. We have started the process of trying to find the funds to build a new rail and auto bridge to Pelican Island. A&M Galveston definitely wants to expand, but they have limiting factors, and one of them is that bridge. In addition to that, there is a lot of unused property on Pelican Island, and we really believe that the key to making that a viable economic growth center for the county is adequate transportation in the form of a rail and an automobile bridge over there. So we've just started that process, so it should take 3 years, so make that into government terms 15 years, that thing will be done. And last thing I want to talk about real quick is I want to brag on BAHEP because I met with them extensively last week about a program they have to mentor returning veterans. I'm a veteran myself, obviously I have a soft spot for veterans, and I consider myself very lucky because I don't need anything from the VA. I think if I did, I'd be very unhappy with the VA, from what I hear. No. Oh, Simon insisted that I would be very happy with the VA. Okay. Anyway, they have a program to hook up returning veterans with mentors in the community and help them do what they want to do, whether it be start their own business, get the proper education and training to find a job that they want. And BAHEP that's kind of something that you would expect from BAHEP, but from what I've heard from John Martinek and Dan last week, it's a fantastic program. They immediately signed me up as a mentor, and I said I'm probably a better entrepreneurial mentor than a government elected official mentor, so maybe you put me on that category. But it's a great program, and I look really forward to it being successful. I think you have 50 participants right now, and you're looking to expand it to 150. So if any, I'm sorry?
50 right now.
50 right now, but you hope to expand to 150.
Correct.
Right. So if any of you have any assets or skills that might lend themselves well to that program, please get with BAHEP and work yourselves in there. That's all I've got really for remarks. I'll be glad to answer any questions before I step off and pass it off to Commissioner Mormon. Any questions? No one asked about mosquitoes? We are expecting significant rains by the end of the week. So at least in Galveston County, go ahead and set your calendars. 6 days after that, there'll be mosquito hatching. And 6 days at that point, everyone will be calling me wanting their neighborhood sprayed that day. Understand that it's physically impossible. Also understand we spray mosquitoes to stop the spread of infectious disease. So by that standard, we're doing our job. We don't spray so you don't have to buy off at Walmart. It's for the other part that we're doing a very good job of. So before I leave, I will just say thank you for coming out, spending some time with us this afternoon. And for those of you who don't, I have a question back in the back.
What's the current population of your county?
Current population of the county, the official census report after 2010 was 295,000. The estimated census report right now will be 304,000. And in case you didn't know, there's a football game this weekend. It's called Houston, my alma mater versus Rice, Judge Owens' alma mater. I'm sure it'll be a very close game. Sorry, I couldn't say that.
Thank you. And we certainly will take questions for both judges at the end of the program also. So I'd like to introduce the next individual that's going to be introducing our speaker, and that is Commissioner Jack Mormon. Jack was sworn in as Harris County Precinct 2 Commissioner in January of 2011, and Commissioner Mormon's top priority is promoting economic growth in East Harris County by improving the infrastructure in Precinct 2 and developing a business-friendly environment throughout county government. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, please, Commissioner Jack Mormon.
Well, it's good to be here with you all and to be able to introduce my colleague and friend, Harris County Judge Ed Emmett. As you all know, the judge is in charge of herding that group of cats known as Harris County Commissioners. It's not an easy job, but somebody's got to do it, and we're glad that Judge Emmett gets to do it. Before I get to his bio, though, I just wanted to give him a plug and say thanks a lot, because he has been instrumental in helping jumpstart the expansion of the 146 Highway project. Without his help and the help of many others, most of who are in this room, we wouldn't be where we are today, and that's about 10 years ahead of schedule. So I know I appreciate the judge, and I'm sure all of you do too. So thank you so much for everybody's help in that project, especially Judge Emmett. Now to the bio. Harris County Judge Ed Emmett is a graduate of both Rice University and the University of Texas at Austin. From there, his passion for politics took him to the Texas House of Representatives for 4 terms, then to the Interstate Commerce Commission after being appointed by President Bush 41. After a good time out of politics, I hear for good behavior, Judge Emmett was appointed county judge by Commissioner's Court on March 6, 2007, and has since won 2 countywide elections by ever-increasing margins. Judge Emmett is widely recognized as a transportation expert and consultant, and so I don't have to tell you all how lucky we are to have an elected official with that kind of pedigree and background. The judge is patient and persistent about spreading the message for transportation alternatives and smart transportation expansion for our growing region. Everyone, please welcome Harris County Judge Ed Emmett.
Well, thank you very much, Jack. State of the county. It's a big county. To answer your question, whoever asked the question about population, we're close to 4.3 million right now, which makes Harris County larger than 24 states. To put that in perspective, we're unlike any other county. And let me tell you why. Oh, first, let me tell you the financial side. We're one of the few local governments that has a AAA bond rating. And that speaks volumes about the Commissioner's Court. Not just this one, but the previous ones. And one of the most important things, Commissioner Mormon said it, he said herding cats, we actually get along, which for Harris County Commissioner's Court is saying a good deal. Because over the years it has not always been that way. And I think that's important, that we will disagree on some things. I'll probably bring up some things today that, if you ask any member of the court, we'll disagree. But we learned you can disagree without being disagreeable, and that different opinions are okay. It's just at the end, once the decision's made by the court, we all need to work together and go that direction. So we do that. Talking about the size of Harris County, we really missed something. Counties are an arm of the state. We don't have ordinance making power. We can only do the things that the Texas Constitution or the legislature tells us we can do. But what makes Harris County different is the huge number of people that live in unincorporated Harris County. Dallas County has 5,000 people in unincorporated Dallas County. We have 1.6 million. Now let's put that in perspective. People know that Houston is the 4th largest city in the United States. Philadelphia is the 5th largest city. If unincorporated Harris County were to be a city, it would be 5th between Houston and Philadelphia. And by the time of the next census, the population in unincorporated Harris County is going to be bigger than the population in the city of Houston. So why is that a problem? Well, it's a problem because a lot of the streets, the subdivisions that were built, anticipating they were going to be annexed into the city of Houston, I know Clear Lake was, I remember that fight. I know Kingwood was. I missed that fight, I'd already moved. But all of 1960, a lot of areas in other parts of the county, you're lucky in that you have so many municipalities. That actually makes more sense, because we're going to have trouble dealing with an aging infrastructure. For example, streets. When streets come on the county road log, aside from Palm Lane, which if you want to ask Commissioner Moreland about that, he can deal with that. It's a little inside story. When streets come on the county road log, we're not going to have the resources to take care of those. So we have the municipal utility districts that the county commissioners are going to have to find a way either to get their hands on the money of the MUDs to do the repairs, or we're going to have to help the MUDs get the authority to repair streets. So we're going to be back at the legislature saying Harris County is different. Loving County has 82 people. Harris County has 4.3 million people. But yet we're basically treated the same in the Texas legislature. So that's going to be an issue going forward that we have to deal with. And if you start talking about the people who live in Harris County, the demographics, we are one of the most diverse counties anywhere in the country. And when I say diverse, I just don't mean racially diverse. If you look at where people of various incomes live, when I was growing up, you could say, well, poor people lived in this part of town. You can't say that anymore. We now have people living all over the county, unemployed and working poor, and they're scattered out. So how are we going to address some of those issues? I'll get to transportation in a minute. But whether we like it or not, healthcare is going to become a bigger and bigger issue. When I was in the legislature a long time ago, I never remember any conversation about healthcare policy. It was just not something we talked about. I remember when HMOs came up, everybody thought that was the strangest thing they'd ever heard of. But now, like it or not, regardless of who ends up winning the ultimate battle, and I don't think there will ever be a winner, I think this will go on forever at the federal level. People want to do this or they want to do that. But in the meantime, county government is responsible for providing indigent health care. How are we going to do that? And I touch on a subject that causes people to flinch, but when I hear people say, well, we don't want to expand Medicaid, you understand that that means you, the county taxpayer, get to pay for all those costs as opposed to Medicaid paying for all those costs. And you can argue the benefits of Medicaid one way or the other. And when you have people who say, well, if we expand Medicaid, that'll just be a one-time shot. Well, the one-time shot was going to be $4 billion, of which $900 million would have come to this region. And of the $900 million that came to Harris County, less than $100 million would come to Harris County Hospital District. The rest would have gone to the various hospital systems who are providing indigent health care right now. So I'm not here I am not a healthcare expert, but I'm here as the county judge of the largest county in the state that is responsible for indigent health care. And just this morning I read in the paper that our county has the most underinsured and uninsured of anywhere in the country in terms of percentage. We got a problem. And we can argue philosophy all we want, but at the end of the day, it's just like a hurricane coming. We have to deal with the problem. So that's going to be almost a mind-numbing situation that we're going to be facing in Harris County. And you add to that the specific, the one that I'm most passionate about. If you've heard me talk, you've heard me say over and over and over, the largest mental health facility in the state of Texas is the Harris County Jail. That's fundamentally wrong for a lot of reasons. Number one, it costs you a lot of money. It's much more efficient to deal with people with mental health issues in an MHMRA setting or a Systems of Hope setting than it is in a criminal justice setting. So the good news is Senator Huffman, Representative Centronia Thompson carried a bill. So we now have a pilot program going in Harris County that will hopefully create the model for diversion from the criminal justice system of people who really have mental health issues. Because right now, we were asked to identify, as best we could, how many people have been arrested at least 5 times in the last 2 years. The number is now approaching 6,000. Most of those people have mental health issues. For the most part, the crimes they're arrested for are minor. But as we've seen this week, you cannot count on that always being the case. So we're going to have to really focus on mental health. Now, I came into this job 6.5 years ago as a transportation wonk. I never thought I was going to have to spend so much time talking about Medicaid and health care and medical homes and neighborhood clinics. But I quickly figured out logistics. We're going to be a lot better off if we spend our resources, limited as they are, on neighborhood clinics rather than letting people or forcing people to come to the emergency room for their primary health care. Because preventive medicine is a lot more efficient and it's a lot less expensive and it provides a lot better outcome for the patient. So we're going to be pushing that, and you're going to hear me talk about it over and over and over. It's absolutely vital. Now the transportation. We, and this would include Galveston, Brazoria, Fort Bend, all of us in this region, really can be, and we are, the gateway of North America. Global trade, if you just look at a map or a globe, we're perfectly positioned. Big ships, forget the Panama Canal, I'll answer questions about that. That's not really that big of a deal on imports. It can be a big deal on exports of LNG and coal. But so much of the trade is now going to come from places like Brazil, India, West Africa. That will come across the Atlantic. And if you look at a globe or a map, if you're going to go one place in North America that's centrally located, where is it?
Galveston.
It's the coast of Texas. You will go right past Galveston. to either Houston or Freeport. I've got to put a plug in for Freeport because as much as I love the Port of Houston, Freeport has this benefit of being on the Gulf and having a 6-mile dredge versus a 50-mile dredge. So for really, really large ships, they're likely in the long term to go there. But for the 8,000 TEU ships, which are going to still be the workhorse of the system, more and more of those have got to come to Houston. So we've got to make sure, though, that whether it's Galveston, and I agree with the bridge is wretched, it needs all kinds of help. Whether it's Galveston or Freeport or Houston, you know, we don't need to fight over the traffic. We just need to get it all coming to our region, and we're going to be a lot better off. But it won't come here unless we have the transportation infrastructure to move it away from the port, because it's not going to stay here. So rail needs to be improved, and the one highway that is most important to all of that is going to be 146, or at least that corridor. The Interstate 69 bypass to the east side of Houston, I can't figure out any other place for it to go other than in the 146 corridor, unless we're going to build a Pontchartrain style bridge across Galveston Bay, and I don't think that's going to happen, and nor should it happen. Let me quickly add that. That was just an example, okay? I'm not suggesting. So we all need to stay focused on the importance of 146. Let me mention just a couple other things, and then I know we're supposed to take questions. Judge Henry jumped the gun. You're supposed to wait till after we talk. And that way I can say things that make them mad, and they'll ask you the question or something like that. If you've not been to TransStar lately, we're roughly doubling the size of TransStar, our Office of Emergency Management. It's a phenomenal organization. And I think, though, the thing that we benefit from the most, if several good things came out of it, a lot of bad things came out of it, but one of the good things came out was the renewed emphasis on the need for the counties to work together. And, you know, if we can provide service to Galveston, more so to Chambers, a really small county that to take care of some things, then we need to do that. But the best thing we've done lately, you notice we just canceled hurricane season? I mean, it's by far the easiest approach to take. Just don't have any hurricanes. But having said that, we will have other emergencies. I mean, we're going to have chemical plants. We could have man-made disasters of all kinds. So it's important that we continue to focus on the need for Office of Emergency Management. Overlying all of this, though, is something, and I won't spend a lot of time on it, but I was glad Commissioner Clark brought up the water fund. Because as important as transportation is, water is more important. You've got to have water to live. And we live in an ugly political environment right now. We live in a political environment where anybody can get on a social network and say anything they want. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb. I don't know how many of you know Commissioner Clark, and he didn't know I was going to talk about it. But you heard him described as a true conservative. I don't think anybody would question that Commissioner Ken Clark is a conservative. Anybody who's ever heard him talk. Yet we have people on social network, Facebook and others, talking about how awful this water plan is and how it's this great liberal plot. Well, I'm sorry, it's not. We have to, government has to do some things. Government has to provide water. Government has to provide transportation unless you want it all built privately. And then people get mad when private entities build roads. So we've got to get away from this ugliness in politics where nobody wants to spend money on anything. And if you try to spend any money or raise any fee, they go, oh, you're just horrible. We're going to run you out of office. If we do that, we will stagnate as an economy. So we've got to get beyond that. And that's why groups like BAHEP are so important. Because you're willing to stand up and say, you know what, this is going to cost something. I mean, there's no ferry up there that's going to bring us all the things we need without somebody paying for it. And water is such a clear example. I drove to Victoria yesterday and across the Colorado River down, down around Borden. There's no water in it. They're talking about no fresh water going into Matagorda Bay. Well, that's not a good situation for anybody in the state of Texas. You may think you don't live in Matagorda, so you don't care, but we should care. We're going to have to address those issues. So we're going to rely on groups like this to stand up and say, this is a project worth funding. 146 is one of those projects. The bridge to Pelican Island is one of those projects. The water plant is one of those projects. And it's not going to be easy. So speaking of projects, I'm going to leave you with two, because we have two on the ballot for Harris County. First is not the Astrodome. Proposition 1 for Harris County is something that, to my knowledge, nobody is against. And I'll talk about the Astrodome briefly. As important as the Astrodome may be to various people, Proposition 1 provides a detention center and joint processing center. Joint meaning city and county. People always say, why didn't the city of Houston and Harris County get together? Okay, we are. We've gotten together on libraries, we've gotten together on other projects. This is a biggie. It has no tax increase, but we have to sell the bond. We're putting up $70 million, the county is. The city's putting up $30 million. The joint processing center helps this mental health issue. Because as people are arrested, if they don't need to go to jail, if they need to go to MHMRA or the Systems of Hope or anywhere else, that's what will happen to them. We'll divert them. At the same time, people coming out of jail rather than just being released with a pat on the head and say, don't forget to take your meds, they can be processed into some of the right groups that can take care of their needs. This processing center is critical to our future. It will also allow the city of Houston to close its jails, which they have long since been outdated. I think, I'm looking for the city council. I looked at the ex-city council, but I'll look at the current. And so the city's for it, the county's for it, there's nobody against it. Please, 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 talk to everybody you can. Be sure they vote for that joint processing center. It's Proposition 1, it's going to be down there in the mix of all those other things, and it's going to be a problem. Now to the Astrodome, very quickly. How many of you want to save the Astrodome? How many of you want to tear it down? And see, what do the rest of you want to do? Because therein lies the problem. We can't leave it just sitting out there like a rusting ship in the parking lot. We've got to do something with it. We've got a Super Bowl coming. We've got a Final Four coming. So the plan, I will only tell you, I totally support it. I think it's the best plan we could come up with for it. It completely empties it, takes out the seats, and turns it into not a stadium. We don't need another stadium, particularly another taxpayer-funded stadium. It's not a convention center. It is going to be a multi-purpose special event center. People all over the world are already contacting my office saying they've got these great ideas of what to do with it inside. Because it's a big open space. You think the dome's big? You ought to see it without all the seats in it. I mean, you stand in there and be amazed. It will be the only venue of its kind anywhere in the world. And some of the things that people are talking about, they're talking about light shows. We have 75 to 100 festivals and gatherings in the city and county every year. Those could suddenly be held there. A livestock show and rodeo can put the kiddie rides and the food court in there. The tailgate party before the Super Bowl would be phenomenal. But beyond that, OTC has talked about the exhibits they could put in there. To me, it is an asset that belongs to the taxpayers of Harris County. So this is really about asset utilization. And it would be a shame to tear it down at this point, and then 15, 20 years from now, somebody comes up with the greatest idea of all of what to do with the dome, and we go, it's not here anymore. It's now a parking lot or a detention pond. Would I build the dome for this purpose? Absolutely not. But I think at this point, we have it. It's an iconic structure, and it's worth saving. Having said that, it's a debatable point. I don't think anybody ought to lose any friends over it. I think we're giving it back to the voters to say, do you approve or do you not approve? And so I just encourage everybody to look at it and pay close attention to it and decide. But for gosh sake, go vote. I'm worried that, and this is going to be the water bond proposition too, that will be decided in our area because that's just where the voters are. And it might just be decided by the city of Houston because that's what's got the major election on the ballot. So whatever you do, go vote on the propositions. Pay special attention to Prop 6 on the statewide, and pay special attention to the 2 from Harris County. So with that, I'm through. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
We've got about 10 to 13 minutes or so for additional questions. So why don't we open it up to the group for some questions? And I see one here to the right, and I'll step aside. And judges, if you both will come up, I'll get out of the way.
Can we send the commissioners up?
What is the population in the unincorporated areas of Galveston County?
Unincorporated Galveston County is really only Baller Peninsula. That's about 2,000 people, and San Leon Bay Cliff, that's approximately 15,000 people. So we're not nearly the same situation Harris County's in. And the unincorporated county in Galveston is continually shrinking. Texas City annexes some. Actually, there's some small pockets over in the Santa Fe area. So, and of course, we're geographically landlocked, so it'll only get smaller for us in the future.
Let me take 30 seconds and explain why we got in that circumstance. Many years ago, the city of Houston did finger annexations all through the county, and it put almost everything in their extraterritorial jurisdiction, which means you can't incorporate without the city's permission. But then the city of Houston stopped annexing, and for a lot of reasons, mainly political, some Voting Rights Act. Y'all had anything to do with what? Yeah. But as a result, we're in this limbo, and that's why we're in the circumstance we're in.
Judges, what efforts are underway today, initiatives from Orange to Freeport to unite the efforts of our courts to deal with the transportation issues, some of which you've discussed, that are related to making this coast a powerhouse with regard to water shipping?
Yeah. What efforts are underway? The short answer is few, if any. The Texas Department of Transportation now has a maritime division, and they just changed. They appointed somebody to head it up, and then they changed, and they've just appointed somebody new. The problem is going to be, again, legislative, in that each of the navigation districts or ports were established by the legislature in different forms and fashions. And somehow, somebody at the state level is going to have to get together. It could be just a collaborative of the ports. For example, and I don't want to get out in the weeds with this too much, they could really look up and say, like I mentioned, Freeport, okay, anything over 10,000 TEUs, container ship, you go to Freeport. Ro-Ros go to Galveston. Break bulk has to go where break bulk goes, but say Houston. But we shouldn't be competing, those ports don't need to be competing with each other for all that types of traffic. But that's just going to take a recognition on the part of the ports and the port commissioners.
On the Astrodome vote, if we vote, you can answer it too. Broke news. But if on the Astrodome vote, when we voted down, is that clear then it's going to be torn down?
It's not clear, but it's very likely because Commissioner's Court is going to be under tremendous pressure to do something. And there are no other ideas out there that really make sense at this point. There were a lot of people who wanted to do this or that. My favorite was the one who wanted to, by the way, we're going to fill in the hole so it'll be, if approved, and it'll all be level so you won't go down and up, and so it'll make it easier to access. But my favorite was the guy who had a proposal to fill the hole and reenact naval battle scenes. You'd pay to go see that, wouldn't you? But none of the private ideas ever had the money attached to them that it would take. And we had to remind people that the dome belongs to the taxpayers of Harris County. And by the way, the bond is paid off. It is now paid for, which it wasn't for a long, long time. But it's just time to make a decision and move forward.
Could you comment on Biggert Waters?
Go ahead. No, we don't like it.
Yeah, that's fair. We don't like it. It's going to be disastrous, is our unfortunate opinion. For me, you're not sure what we're talking about. It's the new FEMA assessment and an associated insurance cost going along with that. And it's going to have a very devastating impact. I mean, if you've got a house on the water and your insurance was $10,000, it could very well be $100,000. And can you afford that? Probably not. So what are you going to do? You're going to either sell your home or you're going to have to value it at a different level that you can accept some insurance risk. So we are actively working, I know Galveston County is, I assume Harris County is, with Congress to try to get something done. And honestly, short of coastal congressmen, no one really cares a whole lot. That's been the feedback I've gotten.
But it is clearly a congressional matter. Commissioner Mormon, we had a resolution
Thank you.
from Commissioners Court. But you know, the truth is, I mean, I know that Washington just shuddered when they got a resolution from Harris County.
Imagine the sting of Galveston County.
Judges, if we do approve Proposition 6 on the statewide ballot and receive that $2 billion water fund, what are some of the specific water infrastructure projects that we might do in Harris and Galveston counties to take advantage of those available resources?
Actually, the person who should answer is Commissioner Clark, but we're always hesitant to give him the microphone. I think the reality is there won't be a lot of projects here. We're part of a big state, and it's one of those things where we're not suffering from the drought, and we're not suffering from the lack of water, and we don't have the circumstance like the Colorado River. Some of that is urbanization, but you know, the rice farmers aren't even being given any water anymore. And so the impact across the state, we in the urban areas need to make some sense of what's the water plan statewide. And so this is one of those where we need to vote to help out the rest of the state. I hear people all the time on transportation say, well, why should our money go somewhere else? Well, it would be very hard to drive to El Paso if I-10 stopped at San Antonio. So, you know, the taxes would never be there west of San Antonio to put that road in. So we have to help fund that. The same is absolutely true for water. And our area, the city of Houston, really took some good steps years and years ago to provide water for the city of Houston. Some of the other cities aren't so lucky. They haven't done that. So we need to do it. And to get approval for a new reservoir takes 25 years now, 25 or 30 years. So we've got to be able to fund these things.
Question for Judge Henry.
Yes, ma'am.
Judge Emmett mentioned the problem with indigent care and mental health in Houston, and we all know it's a problem. We know it's a problem in Galveston, and I just wondered what the current statistics were and how it impacted not only law enforcement, but hospitals in our county.
It does. We're in a slightly different situation. We don't have a hospital district like Harris County does. We spend approximately $2.5 million a year on indigent care, which he laughs at because he probably loses that in his rounding errors. But about $2.5 million in indigent health care. That's going to go nowhere but up. He's absolutely correct about that, and we're going to do the best we can to manage that cost. We actually got a bit of a break. I hate to say it that way, but after Hurricane Ike, a lot of people moved out of the area, and a lot of people who moved out of the area were the ones who consumed the indigent health care services. We have put together the most comprehensive and maybe the only indigent healthcare network that I'm aware of in the state. That helps us some. So every little thing we can do helps, but the trajectory's up and there's no way around it.
I know you asked that of Judge Henry, but it reminds me of something that I forgot to mention that I have to mention. One of our problems, I was talking about the ugly nature of politics. You know, I grew up when polio was around. And now we have people who are against immunization. And it absolutely boggles my mind. Texas is the only state that has what's called an opt-in system to get on the registry so that we know if you're immunized. Everybody else has an opt-out. If you have some reason that you don't want to be on the registry or you don't want your children on the registry, you can pull them out. That's fine. But we are absolutely hamstrung, and now we look up and guess what? Pertussis is making a huge comeback in our area. As we have a lot of people come here from other parts of the world, they're going to bring the diseases with them. We have got to focus on preventive care and immunizations, and yet, you know, when you have a bill in the legislature to help you do it, and you have people campaign against it on the grounds that this is somehow immoral, and the legislators aren't willing to stand up and say, you know what, I'm just going to disagree with you on this. But, you know, I remember people in iron lungs. I don't want to go back to those days. So this is one of those issues we're going to have to get a handle on and not let what I call a very fringe element in politics drive it.
And I'll follow up with two things. One is well care. He alluded to this earlier. I started a pilot program 2 years ago when I got elected. I bought all the equipment myself and took an old jail space and made it available to county employees. every research agrees it's between $8 and $13 benefit for every dollar you spend on well care. You get that kind of return out for sick care. And that's one thing we have to focus on. We'll expand that program this year for the first time to include all county employees. We will supplement their health club membership if we can verify they've gone 3 times a week for at least 30 minutes, which is what the doctors all recommend. Again, that's well care. You may not think of it that way, but that's exactly what it is. So being able to take that on a countywide employee level, now let's make that countywide for everybody somehow. I don't know how it happens. But to promote well care as an alternative to sick care. And then secondly, we talked a lot about mental health, and I work in the jail 8 or 10 days a month. And it's just unfortunate. The person comes in, typically they're arrested for criminal trespass. As you said, it's a very minor crime. They won't leave a Burger King or they won't leave someone's porch because they're off their medications. We get them in there, and this is what I was going to get to. We're going to start using electronic medical records in our jail now, so that when they come in, we can identify them, and we'll see exactly what medications they should be on. The problem we have is they get on their medications, they go back out into society, and they say, I feel great, don't have medication anymore. And then they're back in the jail in 24 hours.
Where does Texas rank in spending throughout the United States on mental health?
On a per capita basis, very near the bottom.
It is at the bottom.
Is it? No, I couldn't have told you that absolutely for sure, but yeah. And it goes back, and 25 years ago or so, we had these horrible situations where mentally ill were basically warehoused. And so the legislature decided to deinstitutionalize mentally ill. The problem is nobody did anything with them. And so they ended up on the streets and became wards of the county and the state. And that's unfortunate. Now's the time to turn around and say, wait a minute, we've got to do something about this. And I don't want to turn this into a whole forum on that, and please don't raise your hand. But if I ask you, do you have a family member or a close friend or a neighbor who has mental issues? I doubt if there are very many of you in this room who wouldn't raise your hand, because we all do. And that's why it's so important. And again, I'm not a healthcare expert, but we treat diseases of the kidney, we treat diseases of the lungs. We're talking about a disease of the brain. It's healthcare, and we have to be able to treat it and not put it in a criminal justice system.
One last question. We're getting to...
What is the wager between the two judges in regards to Saturday's game between Rice and UVA?
Well,
you want to talk spread, I'm sure.
After watching Rice run up almost 500 yards offense against A&M, I'm pretty hopeful. I hadn't seen that in a long, long time. No, I think both Rice and you. Here's a pet peeve, and I'll leave you with this, and you can say whatever you want to about UVA. The whole conference system's gotten so bizarre. Nobody even knows who's playing who anymore. I mean, we've got the Big 12 with, 9 teams, and the Big 10 with 12 teams. and the Big East goes all the way to California. I don't get it. So, maybe Rice and U of H just ought to play each other 10 times a year and stay home and be done.
I'll follow up with the last thing. We have a commissioner who's a Rice graduate also on our commissioner's court. And of course, every time Houston beats them, 68-0. Ask him, hey, I missed the game, Commissioner Holmes, what was the score? He responds with this. We had a saying when he played football there. When I played football at Rice, the saying was this: that's all right, that's okay, you're going to work for me someday.
I have no idea how you follow that, right? So that was fantastic. Well, certainly, Judge Emmett and Judge Henry, we want to thank you very much for both of you for being here today. Certainly on behalf of all the BAHEP members, we thank you for your leadership, and you can count on our organization to continue to be involved to help you with this important work. So a big round of applause for both of our judges. We again want to thank our sponsor, TXU Energy. We can't do this without our great sponsors, and certainly take a second as we leave to welcome our 3 new members that joined our great organization. And then lastly, over the last several months, BAHEP has done a fantastic job putting a lot of important information on our website. And today, many of those important topics were talked about. And so we certainly would want to encourage everyone to take 5-10 minutes out of your busy schedule. Please take a look at the website. There's additional information on many of the important topics that were covered here, and we encourage everyone to do that. And with that, our program is adjourned, and everyone get home safely. Thank you.